All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining. This is a recap of the live stream. I know there was some people that were having trouble accessing it, so this is just some of the high level points and takeaways from the session. How to use Super in addition to Notion, and really how to get the most out of it as a product for creating and launching your own website. So with that said, I just want to introduce myself. I'm David. I run a website called thenotioncoach.com. I'm also a Notion ambassador, which is basically a community of Notion fanatics that like to geek out over Notion topics, and also in some cases get access to some of the beta features and get to provide feedback on some of the best and brightest new features that are upcoming in the pipeline for Notion, which is always fun. And other side notes, I also teach computer science with high school students. And I also founded a company called Superform that we ran in New York City for about 4 years, more so consulting on creative projects with startups, specifically with branding and marketing. And currently with the Notion Coach, it's a combination of creating templates, both free and paid versions of templates, mostly centered around productivity strategies and models, specifically for individual creators or small teams, and also doing some consulting with startups and small teams migrating to Notion from places like Google Drive or Dropbox, and really trying to consolidate, all of their digital operations in one place, which Notion is a great space to do that. And also, if you're on Twitter, let's connect the handles Dave from Hialeah, which is a neighborhood in Miami. So I've also been using Super for my own site, the Notion Coach, for a couple months, but have been revamping it as of late, currently in progress. And there's been a few recent features from Super that are really great and make the customization side a lot easier and a lot more frictionless, which is great. So we're going to get into a couple of these things, specifically the builder tool, which I think is pretty amazing. And also some things to keep in mind, whether or not it makes sense to use Notion and Super for your website. There are definitely use cases, particularly for creators, for bloggers, designers that are trying to keep a portfolio up to date. Things like that use cases that lend themselves quite well to using Super. Some of the things we'll get into in this session are just, introducing what is Super, how does it work, how do we go from creating a Notion page to launching a fully functional website, looking at themes. They're in a couple places. There's a marketplace for both free and paid versions of themes, really having different looks on everything from a super stylized, more design agency vibe theme to more of a minimal blog, but we'll get into those later. The builder tool, which has a combination of themes and components and a component library that you can use, drag and drop pieces of a website and really get the organization of your web page or website up and running almost instantaneously. And doing a brief look into CSS and HTML, not too deep because it's not my forte, but in the case that you want to dive a little deeper into your theme or just make some quick customizations, we'll take a look at the best ways to do that using the Super community, and then also using the code editor within your portal. So just a quick recap, if you're new to Notion or Super or both, Notion, the best way to describe it is it's digital Lego blocks. So you can plug and play everything from just basic text to embedding things like forms or videos to the most exciting part of it, in my opinion, the tables and databases, which really allow you to organize content and organize lots of content in a variety of different ways. Everything from just a minimal list view to a gallery view where you could present creative work, or in a lot of cases, create a visual like organization of blog posts, which we'll get into a couple of examples too. But in a nutshell, Notion is a great space for really kind of customizing your particular workspace, whether you work individually or in a team, and looking at what are the pieces of information that you want to surface at any given time of or any given part of your workflow. So kind of unlimited customizations, and really allows you to, cater the product to your specific workflow. Super, it's built entirely or exclusively for on top of Notion, and really allows you to take a Notion page, share it to the web, and connect a domain. You have the option to edit SEO, to add some analytics, and in a very short amount of time, turn it into a website. So if you're already a Notion user, this is kind of a no-brainer. And I know there's a few different tools that are doing the same thing where you're building a website on top of a Notion page. But in my experience and working with the Notion Coach website, it's just been super frictionless, allows you to get the customization that you're looking for. And as long as you're not building anything too custom or need any specific experiences within a website, it really covers a lot of different use cases. So something to keep in mind there. Whether or not to use Super. So, there are some factors to consider. If you're building a website or in the process of building one, or looking ahead and planning to have or launch a website in the future, some things to consider, if you are, for example, already a Notion user, and organizing your content in Notion, that would save definitely a few steps with taking that content, throwing it into a new page, and then connecting it to Super, and then launching it, especially if you have your own domain. Bonus points if you're already organizing content like blog posts or visual work, or copy for a landing page or a sales page. That makes it more about adding imagery, adding content, and turning that into its own page. And also, if you're comfortable, editing CSS and kind of getting into the weeds about, changing the look and feel, changing, the navigation bar, that's a feature of Super, changing, maybe editing out icons in a database, or spacing within a table property or a gallery view, things like that. Great thing about this is that the Super community, which if we just kind of jump ahead a little bit, but if we go into the, in the login, if we go to community, we'll take a look at this again later in a bit, but you have these channels on the left side. But if we go to questions, odds are if you've got a question about editing a particular feature, somebody's asked that question, and the Super team is super responsive with, no pun intended, with getting back to you on information or some code that will probably solve your problem. So even if you're not a pro in HTML or CSS, it's pretty straightforward. The labeling is pretty intuitive in terms of identifying what to change, and looking at that preview of your site, which we can do in Super. We'll also take a look at that in a little bit. Some things to consider: if you already have a site and it's working, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. It's probably a good solution, at least for the short term. If you require deeper integrations that are very niche or very specific, you want to check that if you're using Super or any other tool that's built on top of Notion, if that's supported, if it's something that you can embed, and if not, it may not be the best solution. And also, if you need more custom experiences in your website that just require more customization, then it might not be a good fit. Again, it's pretty ideal for content creators in general, that have the content and have the media, but just need a solution to publish it in a way that there is some customization that you can do. So some things to keep in mind there with going through the website creation process. Whether or not you do use Super, I'm a big fan of using Notion for organizing content and really just going from outline to draft to, getting full copy ready, regardless of what CMS or what platform you use. It's just a way to kind of bring all your information together and keep it in one place and have it ready for publishing. So let's get into the Super Home site. There's a couple things that are definitely helpful resources that we want to take a look at and are definitely helpful when you get into the process of creating your site. So very briefly, the market here, this has a growing collection of themes, templates that you can use, some free, some paid, but you can see, some are more of a Linktree vibe versus kind of a full-on portfolio versus, a landing page. So if you see here, all have very different looks and feels and are all ultimately Notion pages with some customizations and CSS on top of that. So it's pretty wild, the different styles that you can get, just looking at the marketplace, and even beyond that, when you start to make your own customizations. But if you do, for example, open up a theme from here, we can take a look at a preview of the site, what it looks like. You can imagine this as a Notion page. This is a full width image. We've got 2 columns here. We've got some probably H1 or H2 text, and you got another full width image. So you can see here, it definitely doesn't look like a Notion page, but it has its own feel, and it just retains a lot of the clean, minimalist vibes that you get in Notion. And that's just one example. If we go just, go into the Notion Coach, which is still in progress, but this is actually using the funky theme, which we'll take a look at with a few different edits. But again, you got essentially an articles database that's in gallery view with some properties turned on, some turned off, and sign up form using a tool like Tally. There's a lot of different tools you can use for sign up forms as well. But if we look at the original Notion page, this is a standard page. It's full width. It's got small text turned on, and you can see how, for example, the callout blocks are clear versus, with some edits, they have a completely different look. Again, you have this gallery view here. You've got the sign up form, and that's about it. So, if you find the website creation process daunting and you don't want to start from zero, using a theme, even if it's just to get the hang of editing CSS or, what does your content look like using this theme, it's really easy to just kind of not start from zero, which could be a little bit overwhelming. So something to consider if you're using Super and want to explore that as an option. Guide section, this has a growing list of resources as well. Things from migrating from other tools like Fruition, how to edit, SEO, getting a little bit more detailed there, and any new features, when it comes to things like analytics or integrating with different tools. You're going to find that in the guide section. And again, this has grown quite a bit since I started using Super. So it's nice to see, those integrations come to the users. Next showcase is just, browsing cool projects. And then we'll get to the builder a little bit more in detail later on, but this is a pretty awesome tool where you could essentially duplicate this page, find some themes, and drag and drop components to really quickly set up a page, at least in terms of layout and the type of content that you want to have on a page, especially if you're creating a landing page, if you're trying to sell or offer a course or services. This is the fastest option or solution that I've seen, in my opinion, without having to use a bulkier CMS or other platform. So with that said, if we sign in here, you're going to get into your account page. So this will show you your active sites. If you don't have one, you'd click on new site to create a new one. We're going to create a test one together. But you can see here, we've got a couple here. We've got 3, the Notion Coach, Notion for Teachers, which is also a site that I manage. And on the left side, we've got a few links, a couple things to keep in mind. Account, you're just gonna have your information in there. Community, also, this is a shortcut to that same view. If you've got questions or you're looking for, have any other users had the same question or issue? If you're looking for specifics when it comes to code, trying to make any customizations, you'll likely find it here. And if not, you can ask the community, and it's super active community there. So something to keep in mind there. So if we go into one of these pages, what we're going to do is take a quick look at some of the options that you can edit, some of the things that you can add to your page on top of Notion. And then we'll go into the builder tool, take a look at how that works, create a new test site, get it up and running, and kind of go through that whole process. So if we go into settings, that settings wheel on the Notion Coach page, you've got this navigation on the left-hand side. Let's take a look at what's happening here. So we've got details. These you'll set up when you're creating a new site. You want to give it a name, and you want to connect the URL. We'll take a look at doing that later also. Domains, the default is going to be a .super.site domain, but if you do add your own domain, there is documentation on the Super website to help you out with that, making a few different changes to make sure you're connecting Super to the domain provider. Pages, this is also super useful. Gotta stop using Super, no pun intended again, but any pages that show up on your website, they're automatically organized into this kind of site architecture where you have the option to edit the name of the page. If you know Notion pages, they've got these long strings of numbers and letters at the end of the URL. So not the nicest looking if you've got a public web page, but you can just change it to your domain /about, for example. And you can also add in new pages as long as you've got the Notion URL and it's shared to the web. You can add that to this menu as well. If we go into options, we can change the language of the site. If you've got a favicon, this will show up in the browser at the top of each tab. Search engine indexing, if you want it to be, if you want to be searchable with content and you want people to find you through searching different keywords, or if you're writing or creating content, probably want to have that turned on. We do, however, want to disable probably the page properties. For example, in the Notion Coach website, if I expand these properties here, this is actually within a pages database. So we've got these properties associated with the Notion Coach page, everything from any projects associated with it, when it was last edited, tags or properties that are relevant to the backend, but you probably don't want published on the user-facing site. So in this case, we'd want to turn that off. So we would disable page properties, and that goes away. That would be up here above the Notion Coach title. The next thing is site search, which is just that search icon at the top right. You'd want to turn that on if you want quick access to, any blog posts or any sub pages within your website there. Code, we're going to take a look at this in a bit when we get into the builder, but if you're dropping in HTML or CSS, you're going to drop that here. For example, this is using that funky theme, which we're going to take a look at, but this just changes the background color. We take a quick peek. If I change that to all black, You'll see it updates automatically. You get that preview that's pretty much real time, so that if you're making any changes, especially in the CSS, you get to see what that's going to look like prior to saving and essentially republishing it. If you're new to CSS, you definitely want to lean on the community, because you can either ask questions or see if do a quick search, see if anybody's tried to do the same thing that you're trying to do, and hopefully get the answers that you need. And also the themes within the Super Builder also have some customizations that you can kind of dive into and make some tweaks in there as well. So definitely useful there. And then in the theme, if you're editing CSS, some of these might not update because you do have some code overriding what would be in here, but we'll take a look at that with the new theme, because you can change like the color palette really quickly and make some changes to the navigation bar. Like if we want to go more minimal with that hamburger menu, if you want it to be a little bit more balanced, I like to go with the simple. And if you've got links either to Notion pages that are located in your website, or if you've got a button or call to action that you want to take people somewhere else, if you've got a product or service that you're selling, you can set that up in the links section for these menu items, updating a logo, which is going to pop up on the top left. The styling of the navigation bar, if you notice, it's stays on the top of the site. So you could turn that off so that it's no longer visible when you scroll. And things like add a shadow. You've got call to action. This is that button at the top right, which allows you to take somebody to a Notion page or an external page, which is pretty useful. Navigation bar is definitely something that Notion users have been asking for, if that could be an option, because so many people, or so many more people, are now using Notion pages as websites. So not sure if that feature is coming to Notion, but it's definitely nice to have that in Super, because just makes navigation that much easier and really makes it feel much more like a website. So that's an overview of the tools that you have when you jump into a page. What I wanted to do now is get into the builder, see what's in there, see what components we can use, and create a site from scratch. So let's take a look at that now. I'm going to close this community page. So if we go back to the Super website, you'll notice the builder in the header. So we're in this page currently, and we're going to duplicate the builder, which is basically opening up the Notion page or the version of this page that we can start to kind of play around with. So when you open that page, you're going to duplicate to basically bring it into your workspace. So if you're logged in already, your workspace will show up in this page, but thankfully we've already got this in our workspace to take a look at. So let's go back into workspace here, and it'll look like this. It's called Builder. And if we scroll down a little bit, we've got this component library, which has a ton of different templates and building blocks that you can use to quickly ramp up a page. This usually has an example here that will kind of give you an overview of what that page might look like, but I want to create it from scratch. So if you click on that create a new page button, you're going to get this call out block that we can drag and drop components into. A couple things to keep in mind, in case I forget, you can delete this text, but you do want to leave that last row open. It's just a rule that Super has, so you want to keep that in mind. So let's say you've got an idea of what you're trying to create with a landing page, and you want to put in some placeholders to then replace with your own content. If we go to this component library, you'll see we have different categories, everything from hero content, like some things that are above the fold or calls to action, to creating a gallery, to creating a blog view, all the way down to footers, forms, and helpers. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag a few of these into this new callout block, this new page that we're going to turn into a website with Super. So let's take a look at the hero images. I'm going to grab, let's grab this one over here. If you click Alt or Option, click and then drag it in, you'll essentially make a duplicate of that component. And you'll notice it comes in as a page. So if we click on this menu and we say we want to turn it into text, what's going to happen is it brings us into this same page, but it retains any of the formatting that was in that page. Specifically, if you've got multiple columns, you'll see we got this column here with the call to action. We've got this image to the right. So anything that's formatted in this way, if we bring it in as a page, convert it into text, that means that it's retaining all of that, and you start to get these more dynamic layouts that would be hard or maybe not possible to do directly in Notion. So it's a nice workaround for that with the component library. Let's bring in a few more components. So I want to bring in a blog and maybe a gallery. Drop that in below. And then we will bring in, let's say, a footer, something simple. Drag this over and add it there. So we've got 3 pages. We're just going to go ahead and do the same thing, turn these into text, and do a little bit of cleaning up, like getting rid of this text here, which used to be the title. Turn into text as well. And one more with the footer. Here we go. So obviously you want to update the content in here with your own content. So make sure not to forget that step before hitting publish and connecting it to your domain. But now that we've got some content in here and imagining that you've updated it with your own, we want to then do a couple things. First, we're going to turn this entire block into a page. So I'm going to go in here, turn into page. Now you'll see we've got this link. I'm going to change the name of this to test site 1. Go back to the previous page. So we've got a page now that we're ready to turn into a super website. So I'm going to go into my sidebar. I'm going to drop this into, expand this a little bit, drop into the workspace. It's going to favorite it so that it comes up in my favorites. And in the top right menu, I'm going to do a couple things. First, you're going to share this to the web. You need to share it so that Super can read the content in the page and publish it to your domain. So things like search engine indexing, we can turn that on if you want to maybe disable duplicating as a template and disabling, keeping editing and comments off. But this URL where you're going to copy, because you're going to need that in Super when we create a new site. So we've got that URL. Let's go back into Super Editor. So I'm going to create a new site here. I'm going to call it, again, test site number 1. And here I'm just going to right click, paste that URL and press continue. So we've got that loading into Super. So you can see that it was pretty quick in terms of setting that up. You got the same menu on the left-hand side, and you got a preview of what this page is going to look like. Now, what I want to do is go back into the Super Builder, because we've got a few more tools and features that we can use. So I'm going to open this up one more time. And if you notice at the bottom, some extra resources, you've got some opportunities to customize. If we go into themes, for example, we've got a few different ones Funky might look familiar because that's what we're using with the Notion Coach. And if you want quick access to CSS, what you would do if you want to apply the look and feel of any one of these themes is you really just copy and paste this into the code editor. So for example, let's try this with a slightly different theme. I'm going to go ahead and copy this night theme, and we're going to paste it into the body. So if you notice, quite a few things changed. Background color, color of the fonts. So we've got a slightly different spacing layout. Content is still the same, but you've changed the CSS, which is kind of changing the theme. So in this super builder, you're getting not only the CSS, but if you go into, for example, the funky theme, you've got that style sheet here. And then you've also got some information in terms of navigation bar, if it's using a particular font. So you have the option to use the look and feel or use bits and pieces of it based on, what you're going for. So a lot of options for customization there to, make it feel pretty different from a Notion page, which is definitely exciting. So, with that said, a couple things to keep in mind are, again, if you're used to, or if you're already using Notion for organizing content or, creating content, if you're already sharing, Notion pages that are not stylized and you're thinking about having more of a look that's in sync with your brand or marketing materials, then something like this kind of makes it a lot easier to do that. If you're new to Notion and new to Super, might make sense to kind of play around with both a little bit more before you kind of jump into, using both products for your website. But in either case, Super makes it really easy to just test out with the builder tool, drag and drop some components in, preview it in this view, and really get a sense of, if it's doing all the things that you're trying to get it to do. So with that said, hope that was helpful. If you got any questions, let's definitely connect. Easiest is on Twitter. Hashtags or the usernames at Dave from Hialeah. You can also find me on YouTube if you want to subscribe for more Notion productivity, maybe some more Super videos. And also got a newsletter on productivity systems in Notion called manifest.substack.com. So hope to stay connected with you. Hope that was helpful. Definitely reach out if you've got any questions, or if you're going through this experience building a site on Super and want to share that with me. I'd love to hear it, and love to hear what you think about the product as well. So catch you in the next video. Have a good one.